Would I still buy an Indian instead of a Harley Davidson? Let's talk about it. It's Fastlane. So the year was 2020, and I was about to make one of the biggest, most important decisions of my entire adult life. Was I getting married? Was I having another child? Was I changing careers? No, I was getting a new motorcycle. And with that dilemma came two major brands that I settled on that I wanted to choose between, one being Indian and the other being Harley Davidson. So essentially what I want to do in this video is I want to revisit this video right here, which is why I bought an Indian instead of a Harley Davidson. I made this video about approximately 3-4 years ago now, and it pretty much tells the journey and the story, and that video's got a ton of views. It's got 400,000 views right now and just continues to climb, and thank you guys for that, by the way. So essentially, if you want to hear the entire story, watch that video right there. But what I'd really like to do today is just kind of summarize it up, revisit my decision, and pretty much go through am I happy with the decision that I made? So the questions ultimately that I'm going to answer in this video are why I chose the Indian Scout Bobber, why I didn't choose a Harley Davidson, what I love about the bike, what I'm not a huge fan of, and would I make the same decision if I was to make that decision again today. Before we get into all that, I need you to do something for me. Would you like the video real quickly right there and subscribe to the channel if you like this kind of thing? Comment below if you don't agree with this stuff, or if you do, let's talk about it. Comment below. Couple disclaimers really quickly. Things that I'm going to revisit from the last video is number one, I do not hate, and I repeat, I do not hate Harley Davidson. I do not hate Harley Davidson riders or the culture or anything about the brand. Well, there's maybe a couple things that I hate about it. I don't know.
What did you say?
We roll how we roll, and if people are annoyed or intimidated by it, that's too bad for them.
Nobody except that little freak would ever say something like that to our faces. Yeah!
I'm a fan, man. And I think Harleys are super cool personally. I mean, I actually really struggled between my decision, and I could be sitting here saying the exact opposite of what I'm about to tell you. Should I have just made slightly a different decision and the circumstances been slightly different? If you came to watch this video and you're a fan of Indian or you're just not a fan of HD and you think I'm gonna be on here just kind of trashing Harley Davidson, that's not what this video is about. And the second thing I really want to address in this video is something that kind of came about because of the last video. That video actually had a lot of controversy surrounding it. People did not like some of my opinions that I expressed in that video, and that's fine, right? We all have difference of opinions, and we all have the right to express them. That video got a lot of hate. People said that I was dancing around in a skirt because I lived in Oregon, and people didn't like my earrings. I just gotta be me, man. Did I rant and rave a little bit on that video? I believe I did, and I would encourage you to go over and watch it if you haven't watched it, and maybe you'll be inclined to leave me a mean comment as well. I mean, I tried to actually respond to some of these comments. I tried to defend my positions, and I finally gave up. After 400,000 views and thousands of comments, I finally got to the point where I was like, I am just not going to argue about this anymore. So let's talk about why I struggled between the brand Indian and the brand Harley Davidson. Harley Davidson has been around since 1903. They have been a company that has continually produced bikes since 1903. Now, they've swapped hands a few times, but if you know the history, you know Willie Davidson got in there and he got the company back for the family and, kind of restored the company when AMF had kind of driven it into the ground for a while. There has essentially been a continual heritage that has just gone on and on and on with Harley Davidson. And regardless of what you feel about Harley right now, some people are concerned. They're like, Harley's gone woke. Or Harley's just they're not making the same bikes they used to or whatever. They're still producing bikes, okay? The world is simply different than it used to be, and they're trying to navigate that, I think, the best they know how. Have I been a complete fan of everything they've done? I haven't. I've been vocal about that at times. I haven't always been a fan of what they've done. but I am a fan of Harley Davidson. Now, Indian is a company that's been around since 1901, but honestly, in all actuality, I mean, come on. Indian's owned by Polaris, right? And some people, that really rubbed them the wrong way when I said that, but it's actually the fact, okay? They're owned by Polaris as a company. I think where it gets sticky for a lot of people is that Indian has not been in continual production. There has been enormous gaps from 1901 until now. Several companies have picked them up. They've tried to kind of throw a bike or two out. It hasn't really worked. They've never regained or been able to sustain that original heritage they had back in the early 1900s. They just haven't been able to do it. So I absolutely get it. You know, when people are basically like, well, it's Polaris, it's not Indian. No, it is Indian. But yes, Polaris is the conglomerate or the company that owns them. I do think Polaris has absolutely done the absolute best of any company that has ever picked up the name or the brand. Polaris has done a phenomenal job with their bikes, and they are phenomenal machines. There's no discounting that. If you haven't been on one and you want to trash them or whatever, you probably need to get your butt in the seat of one and see what you're talking about, and then maybe you can make a little bit more of an informed decision. But I guess essentially what I'm saying is Indian just hasn't had that heritage, and they certainly, now correct me if I'm wrong, but I've been riding Indian now for like 4 years, and I'm going to tell you honestly, I do not feel like that community and that brotherhood around the brand that I see with Harley Davidson. You know, Harley Davidson just had their huge anniversary a couple years ago, you know, and they had their homecoming, and everybody goes back to Milwaukee, and they have these huge events, and just Indian, they just can't seem to capture that. And I'm not really sure why. I'm not sure if it is that they just haven't been continually producing. They haven't been able to build that fan base. You know, a lot of, I think, what's happened with Harley Davidson, it's generational. You know, it's been passed down from generation to generation. Grandpa and my dad and now me ride a Harley, and with Indian, you just can't say that. Now I can say this. My dad was riding like a Honda 50, and this guy wanted to trade him his Indian that weighed like 1,000 pounds or something, I don't know, back in the 50s, but my dad wanted that Indian, you know. I could say there's a history for me with Indian, and I think that is a little bit what drew me to it, that my dad had a little bit of a connection there. But because of the gaps in the production of Indian, it just wasn't a brand that could continually be passed and passed on and passed on the way Harley Davidson has been. And it's been very communal and very family oriented, not to mention the whole like club scene. You know, whether it be the 1%ers or whatever, those guys have absolutely rode Harley Davidsons almost exclusively, if not exclusively, in a lot of those clubs for years and years and years. It had to be a Harley. So I'm absolutely going to say, as far as the community, as far as I can tell, man, I mean, I got a video that's got 400,000 views talking about their precious Indian Scout, and nobody has ever once reached out to me and wanted to talk to me about that from Indian. I cannot imagine that with Harley Davidson. And I guess I'm just confused about that. You know, I have supported their brand and I promoted their product for the last several years. I've got hundreds of thousands of views, millions of impressions on YouTube for the video talking about this bike, and they've never ever talked to me. I don't get it. But does that mean I'm going to switch over to Harley Davidson? No, it doesn't. It also doesn't mean I'm going to stick with Indian. I mean, I like whatever bike I like. I am not really a brand specific guy. I kind of ride whatever I like, and you know, if you've watched it all, you know that I'm a huge fan of Royal Enfield right now. And I have one, and I've done some demos on some of their other stuff and done some videos on that. Check those out if you haven't. But I mean, I'd do some stuff with Harley if they wanted to do something with me. I'd check out some of their stuff. So hey, Harley, if you're watching, let's chat. So enough of that. Let's talk about what I love about the Indian Scout. All right, things that I love. I love the styling of the bike. I love the looks of the bike. I love the power of the bike. I love the way this matte black paint job looks, the Thunder Black smoke. I think this bike looks stellar. I think the engine on these bikes, now this is a 2019, so they've changed it a little bit, you know, just this last year, 2024, they changed it up. It's got a little bit of a new look. It's cool. I still like this one better, personally. It's my personal opinion, so I'm glad about that because I'd probably be bummed if I really loved the new one better than this one. It is faster, but I still love this one. I think the engine on these bikes absolutely looks like a work of art. The lines on these bikes absolutely flow like a work of art. I think whoever designed these things, bravo, bravo. I feel cool on this bike. This bike makes me feel kind of like a badass, you know what I'm saying? Especially once I put those mini apes on, man, just riding down the road, I feel cool on this bike. It feels mean, it feels tough. I don't feel embarrassed. I feel like it's got tons of power. It's fast. It's cool. Sounds good. With the Stage 1 exhaust, now you can also get Vance and Hines and a whole bunch of different companies. These are just the Stage 1 slip-ons on this one from Indian, and they absolutely sound really, really nice. They have a nice low rumble, and they just sound good, and I've never been embarrassed, and most people who've heard them have been like, that thing sounds good. I love the fat tires on this bike. You know, this one's, of course, the Bobber. It's got the fat front tire, which is very retro and very Bobber-esque. And I just think it looks mean. It's not as good for handling, you know, as a skinny tire, of course, or a bigger tire or whatever, but it absolutely looks super cool, and it just adds to the look. The bike looks mean. This bike's good on the highway. I mean, I've taken it all the way up to Portland from Eugene, which is not a long ways. I've taken it over to Bend, which is a few hours and back. And, you know, probably my longest trip was probably like a 6-hour day or something like that, which is not huge on this bike, but it absolutely did the job. Now, I would say the seat I have is probably not the most comfortable. There's probably some better, more comfortable seats you can get for this bike, but I do think the bike does exceptionally well on the highway. It's about 570 pounds wet, and it absolutely is enough weight on the highway that you're not getting blown around, and this bike absolutely feels solid on the highway. The bike also has some really cool features. You know, it's got ABS, which is really nice, and that's helped me out a couple of times. It is a water-cooled bike, which not my favorite aesthetic on the bike. I will say this, the suspension is pretty hard. You know, you're gonna bottom out and you're gonna hit some bumps pretty hard. It's got an incredible rake on that back end especially, and because of how steep that's, you know, like the suspension's like this instead of like this, you know, it's really, you're gonna hit those bumps really hard. The Syndicate seat absolutely helps that a lot, but yeah, it's for aesthetics, and you're kind of, you know, you're doing form over function without a doubt. It looks cool, so that's why you got that kind of looking suspension. The bike's adequate with a passenger. I'd say it's probably better than a Sportster, you know, as far as size-wise. It is a bit better. It's a little more leans over towards like the Street Bob in size, maybe slightly smaller than that, but it kind of sits in the middle there somewhere. But yeah, I've definitely had my wife on it. I've had a few passengers on it over the years. I wouldn't go on a really long trip. You know, I wouldn't go 6 hours probably with a passenger. You could probably do it, but for me, no. The fit and finish of this bike is absolutely stellar. I mean, you've got all kinds of Indian branding all over the bike, which looks really, really nice. You're not gonna see any like janky welds or anything that's like weird or off on this bike. It is absolutely honed in. You are gonna get a very, very supreme and refined machine. And that is one thing I'll say about the engine of these bikes. They are very refined. You know, I think some people, there's some pros and cons to that. Some people are like, well, maybe a Harley has a little more character. Probably yes, but this bike is refined and it's smooth. I do like the side license plate. That's kind of a bobber thing. I think that's cool. Some people don't like that, but I like it personally. So is there anything that I don't like about this bike? All right, I kind of mentioned it a little bit ago. I will say this. I'm not a huge fan of the Radiator. All right, I don't love a Radiator on a bike. I don't love the look of a water-cooled bike. I understand the function of it. They run a lot cooler, et cetera, et cetera. There's obviously benefits, and I don't like the way it looks. That's just me personally. Feels like there's a big rectangle in the front of your bike, and it's just not my favorite. The frame of this bike, it's not the best, in my opinion, for customization, all right? You know, you get a Harley, you get a Sportster, you get something like that. Those frames can be chopped up, they can be re-welded. You can get extra frames, extended frames, hardtails, whatever for those bikes. And you can make those bikes be about whatever you want them to be. This bike, unless you're really, really skilled, you know, you work for Roland Sands Design or something, yeah, you're not gonna chop this frame up. As I've said before, I think these bikes are accessorizable, but they're not super customizable. You know what I'm saying? I mean, people do it. Yeah, I think there's a lot better platforms if you want to customize a bike. If you just want to accessorize a bike and that's all you want to do, it's a great platform, man. Matter of fact, it's probably got most things that you already want. Have I had any trouble with the bike? Here we are. Let's see, the bike's a 2019. We're sitting here in 2024. The battery is getting weak. Okay, I definitely, in the cold, it's having a harder time starting. I definitely need a new battery. I've done a few oil changes over the last couple years. I've changed the air filter. There's not much more that I've had to do except, you know, keep the tires aired up, change the rubber on the tires. Yeah, the only problem I've had is the USB, which is right there on the speedometer. Hey, there. The little door broke off. Other than that, man, I have zero complaints. This thing has absolutely run like a top. It has not given me a bit of worry or trouble. And I just come out every morning and jump on the thing and it runs perfect. So in case I didn't mention it, why didn't I get a Harley? Honestly, this bike just came up at the right price point. I kind of had a price that I wanted to stay at. I didn't want to go up to a street bob, $15,000 at the time. 10 grand was pretty much my budget, and I knew I needed to stay within that. That changes. Life changes, you know, but at the time, 10 grand was it. I could get a Sportster. I get one of these used, and I did get this for $10,000, and it was practically like brand new, dude. And the final question of the day, ultimately, would I make the same decision again? If I was faced with this decision again, right now, 2024, and I've got Harley Davidson, I've got Indian, I've got a variety of other bikes in front of me, would I buy the Indian Scout Bobber? In all honesty, I don't know. In all honesty, I do not know. And the reason is I've grown a lot on my motorcycle journey, all right? I'm a lot more interested in customizing bikes. I'm more interested in older bikes. I'm more interested in Royal Enfield. I'm more interested in choppers. Yeah. As far as a great bike that's reliable, yeah, I would. As far as what I really want right now, I don't know. With that being said, I'm not sure what you want to know. I'm hoping you just want to know my personal experience. I'm not giving you a bunch of specs and, you know, you can figure all that stuff, listen to somebody else's video. That's not really what I do. I personally think you just got to find the bike that is right for you. What feels right for you? What do you like? What do you love? What kind of sparks joy for you? And at the end of the day, what do you want to do with that bike? If you want a bike that you can super accessorize, that bike will do it. You can accessorize that bike. If you want a bike that you can super customize, I would say the Indian Scout Bobber is probably not the bike for you. I would also say Honda, Suzuki, Yamaha, a lot of these companies, you know, CF Moto, there's many of these companies that are not the bike for you if you really want to customize a bike, okay? If you want to customize a bike, you want a bare bones style machine that you could chop up, that you're not afraid to do the work on, yeah, it's probably not going to be Indian. But if you just want a bike that is really cool, that you can just hop on. You can add some accessories, kind of dial it in the way you want it to be, and you want to just jump on and go. Maybe you're not super mechanically inclined, or you're just not into that, you know, whatever. Great bike for that. Great looking machine. Absolutely performs. Awesome. I'd encourage you, dude, you gotta get out and you gotta try out some bikes, all right? The most important thing you do is get your butt in the seat of the machines that you want to try. You think something's cool, get your butt in that seat, get out there and take a test ride, figure out which bike is right for you. Now that journey may change over time. It may not be the same forever. What you like today, you might not like 5 years from now, and that's fine. We're all growing, right? We're all learning, we're all changing. Not a problem. That's what life's all about. I want to say thank you to you guys for watching this video. Like, share, and subscribe. Comment below, and if you disagree with me, I want to hear about it right now. I also want to hear what bike you're riding, where you're at in the world, what you think about this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I super appreciate it. I'll see you next time. Remember, there's nothing more rebellious than thinking for yourself. It's Fastlane. You're not using your listening ears.